It began in a trailer in the shadows of the Bal Harbour shops, a money laundering task force like no other in Florida. Cops from two small police agencies, Bal Harbour and Glades County, would come up with a bold plan. An undercover sting to take on some of the most dangerous drug cartels and other criminal groups in the Americas. The man behind it, Tom Hunker, a former narcotics officer who ran a prior money laundering operation called Impact in the 1990s. For the police department of Bal Harbour, a ritzy oceanfront community known for its exclusive boutiques, it was a way to take on the criminal groups while at the same time bringing in millions of dollars to boost the department's budget. For the sheriff's office of Glades County, a sleepy community in the heart of Florida's cane fields, it was also a chance to bring in badly needed dollars.
If you don't have a lot of people, you don't have a lot of big tax base, and that does hurt us. The forfeiture money allowed us to have resources that normally we wouldn't have. Patrol cars, vests, guns for the deputies. We talked about it. We're like, listen, we can maybe do this, and we'll share in the forfeiture money. And when we started talking about the money laundering, that's when Hunker's name got brought up, that he was in charge of Impact, and he knew this. He did this for a living. He was the man. And because, obviously, Little Glades County, we had no experience with that other than street level money laundering where, we deal with small amounts.
Questions arose about why the two agencies would have formed a money laundering task force in the first place.
But what were we doing going to Glades County? Everything about it, to me, red flags came up. It just didn't make sense. It was nothing but a deal to work this money laundering thing. And the people of Bal Harbour didn't even know what was going on. And we don't have drug situations here. We don't have all this stuff. Why were we doing it?
In a village the type of Bal Harbour, that Bal Harbour is, the size and scope and clientele, I would wonder why we would ever entertain doing something like this.
There seems to be, evidence to indicate that this was simply profit-driven.
Under the direction of Hunker, agents posing as money launderers set up deals with the drug cartels and other criminal groups starting in 2009 to clean their drug proceeds. Over the next 3 years, the undercover officers flew across the country, picking up tens of millions in drug cash while infiltrating the criminal groups in the hub where their money would be laundered, South Florida.
I think the evidence speaks for itself. I think, the evidence in this case indicates that they were very successful at laundering money, and we don't have any record of any significant arrests or our organizations that were dismantled over it.
It wasn't law enforcement. They didn't prosecute anybody. They didn't arrest anybody.
The task force says it passed information to federal agents that led to 200 arrests and scores of drug seizures. The DEA says it cannot substantiate the numbers.
It wasn't about going after the crime or the criminal. It was more about, okay, we'll get money, and we'll buy toys.
A Miami Herald investigation found over a 3-year span, the task force ended up laundering at least $55.6 million, eventually returning the money to the criminal groups while keeping up to $2 million for themselves for their commissions. Along the way, the task force flew dozens of times on first-class and business premium flights, staying at luxury resorts in San Juan and Las Vegas while running up $1,000 dinner tabs. Cops bought $100,000 worth of computers and electronics equipment. They spent thousands on weapons, including submachine guns, but not a single audit was ever done on the spending.
Poor administration, poor accountability, poor checks and balances, or poor or non-existent. And one of those things that typically governments do is account for the dollars they spend, and you do that through audits. And that there weren't any says that someone didn't want to know those answers.
The task force was disbanded in 2012 after the Department of Justice conducted a routine examination of the Bal Harbour forfeiture funds, money taken from the seizure of cash and property in drug investigations, and found the agency misspent hundreds of thousands to pay for police salaries. Glades County was ordered to repay more than $700,000.
It was a black eye for the sheriff's office when it first came down. And we had to ride out the storm, and that's where we're at right now. So.
In Bal Harbour, the penalties were even more severe. the village was ordered to return more than $3.5 million and forfeit millions more in future seizures. Ultimately, the controversy prompted Chief Hunker's resignation.
I take full responsibility for everything, and I can tell you right now, we have not done anything wrong.
Hunker, who retired with benefits, declined to be interviewed on camera, but said in a phone interview he wasn't aware of all the spending by his officers. The Miami Herald delved more deeply into the task force practices and discovered that officers withdrew hundreds of thousands from money laundering profits without any record of where the money went. 3 years after the Department of Justice completed its examination, Bal Harbour ordered its own internal affairs investigation and forensic audit of the millions that once flowed through the undercover accounts. What came out of the audit so far is beyond anything they could have envisioned. The task force didn't launder $55.6 million, but possibly up to $83 million in deals with criminal networks that were never reported to the public.
The problem with it, or the concerning portion of it, is that the audit's raising more questions than it is giving answers. And I think when you have that, when you have that happening, that's the moment of concern, and that's what we're doing. We're just trying to answer the questions. If we're going to get this past us, we have to understand what it was in the beginning. There can't be one entity out there saying, "Oh, well, we didn't do anything wrong, we were railroaded," or another entity saying, "No, this was the most corrupt task force in history." No, what you need to do is find the facts and determine them, and let them speak for themselves.
More than $1 million remains unaccounted for in what village officials expect to be a long inquiry.